Good day, class. I am Eunice Cadayona, one of your instructor for this day. I am going to tackle the Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Germanic topic. The term proto-language means an ancient language from which a group of languages have descended through slow modification. Class, are you familiar with your family tree structure? Yes, most of us have some knowledge of our family tree. The chart illustrating family relationships in a tree structure, linguistic relating to language. Researchers employ the same family tree model as a way to trace the ancestry of living languages back to a common parent language. Okay, listen carefully. These scholars have long wondered whether most language in Europe, in the Middle East, and India actually descended from a common ancestral language. An Indo-European proto-language which would have been unrelated to the other world languages such as Chinese, Polynesian, or Hebrew. So, the topics covered for this class will be social history of Indo-European and beginnings of linguistic history of Proto-Indo-European. Okay, let's proceed. The Indo-European language family was discovered by Sir William Jones, who noted resemblances among Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Germanic, and Celtic languages. He hypothesized an ancestral language that long ago gave a rise to languages in these groups. This hypothetical but strongly evidenced language is called Proto-Indo-European. Today, approximately 3 billion people around the world speak a variation of the Indo-European mother tongue language. So, class, are you familiar with mother tongue? Mother tongue language refers to your native language. English is one of these, but they include diverse languages such as Russian, French, Greek, Hindi, or in India, and Persian, Iran. Although we have no documented evidence about the actual location and time of the first Indo-European speakers, but there are two main theories about this. So listen carefully of what I am going to discuss. One group of researchers believe that archaeologist Colin Renfrew argues that Anatolia, in the part of southern Turkey, is the probable region where the Indo-European proto-language first emerged, sometime around 9,000 years ago, as peaceful agriculturists expanded outward from their homeland. Another theory was, as David Anthony, other linguistic archaeologists, believe that the first speakers of the Indo-European mother tongue were chariot driving, warlike pastoralists who migrated out of their homeland on the Black Sea steppe, one of the vast treeless tracts in southeastern Europe or Asia, about 4,000 years ago, and ultimately conquering Europe and Asia and bringing their language with them. Class, let's proceed to the timeline Proto-Indo-European to beginning of English. Indo-European, 3400 BCE, earliest possible end of Proto-Indo-European linguistic unity. Around 3500 BCE to 2500, Indo-European spreads out across Europe, Asia. Around 1000 BCE, original Indo-European language now split into several language groups, okay? And around 700 to 900 BCE, settlement of British Isle by Celts. Now, the social history of Indo-European. Earliest written records of any Indo-European language date only to about 1500 BCE. All other information about earlier stages of Indo-European is reconstructed using historical linguistic methods. Generally, scholars agree that a common Indo-European language was being spoken perhaps as early as 5000 BCE and as late as 3000 BCE. Early Indo-European were late Stone Age people, some perhaps semi-nomadic. They had domesticated animals, they had primitive agriculture, and they had fairly well-developed religion.
Indo-European culture and language. Modern day IE languages share common words for winter, honey, snow, beach, pine, but they do not have common words for ocean, palm, elephant, and camel. As a result, standard assumptions arise that the original home of IE people was inland, in a relatively cool area, likely Eastern Europe and Western Asia. Archaeological implications. The Kurgan civilization in the area north of the Black Sea has been linked to early Indo-Europeans by some archaeologists. More recently, this has been called into question as scholars seek understanding the motivation for such migrations.
Our next topic is Proto-Germanic. Where does Proto-Germanic came from? The Proto-Germanic language most probably developed as Proto-Indo-European speakers that moves westward into Europe. The idea is that this arose in southern Scandinavia, or that Proto-Germanic arose on the mainland somewhere around Denmark and the Elbe River. The Proto-Germanic, or also known Common Germanic, is divided into three Germanic languages. The West Germanic language, we have German, Dutch, and English. In North Germanic languages, we have Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and the Icelandic. And East Germanic, we have Gothic. Next, Proto-Germanic has been influenced by contact with speaker of now unknown language from conquered people. These languages seems to have contributed a substantial amount of vocabulary in Germanic. Proto-Germanic speaker is originally, i.e., Normans settled in an area of Ninth Germany and Scandinavian. In 200 BC, very little common Germanic is recorded. A few words written down by Roman writers in 1st century BC. Proto-Germanic phonology shows these languages originated in the west of Iran. By comparing phonologies in different languages in Asia and Europe to the reconstructed phonology of Proto-Germanic, it can be seen that the western part of Iran, where there were early contacts between Indo-European and Semitic languages, could be just the original land of people who spoke Proto-Germanic language. As we know, Proto-Germanic is an Indo-European language with some phonetic developments like spirantization, devoicing, depalarization, and deaspiration. But the important point is that we see a regular chain shift, A to B, B to C. In this language, in fact, it can't be said that the sound change in Proto-Germanic just related to the phonology of a different local language. For example, voice and voiceless sounds existed in both Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Germanic. And that's all. Thank you for listening.
Good day, everyone. So, after the Proto-Indo-European and Germanic language, the society, the culture, and the characteristics of language have been discussed. So, let's proceed to the Old English. The language, the culture, the characteristics, and the society. After the Proto-Indo and Germanic period, its language became related to three parts, which were the Sanskrit, the Greek, and Latin. These three languages were no longer to exist because of some reasons, especially the evolvement of language. Though it was no longer to exist, but it became the source of evolvement of which language we have today, which is the English language. So those three languages, which were the Sanskrit, the Greek, and Latin, were the oldest language from Earth. They are the source of evolvement, which is, it means that they were the basis of development, language development, and evolvement that we have today, which is the English language. So, the origin of the Old English, since before the three Germanic tribes invaded Britain, Britain was once a place lived by non-Indo-European people between 6000 to 4000 BC. On 700 BC, the Celtics lived the British Isle until the Romans' presence on 410 AD. And after the 410 AD, the Romans' presence abandoned the isle, which means the Celtics remained in the isle. After abandoning the isle, the Anglo-Saxons invaded and occupied the British Isle between 449 AD or the 6th century AD. They pushed the Celtics out of the land to the west. This made the development of the language since then. It means that those occupation of tribes, which were the three tribes, and the Roman and Celtics, it means that the Celtics developed and adapt the changes, especially to the cultures of other people or the groups, which were the Roman and the non-Indo-European language. So now, as you can see in the Old English language, The sample here is the Lord's Prayer. It is the version that was made probably from 10th century. As you can see, the left side shows the language of the Old English, and the right side of your screen shows the translation of the Lord's Prayer in modern English. We didn't know on how to pronounce this Old English language, but I provided the pronunciation of it. So you must have the ability to hear carefully and observe carefully on how to pronounce and to observe the words of the Old English language. So let's proceed.
Federule fu thearton helvu. Si fin nama I halvod, tobe come fin rice. I urde fin willa, un eurdan swaswan helvun. Urne je dai huan likan slav, syleus to dai. Ant fri fusure gildas, swaswa we fri vathurun gildendu. Ant ne je lad fuson kostunge, akal yusus vivele. So lice.
So that's the pronunciation of the Lord's Prayer in Old English. The observation. As we observe the words in Old English version, there are words that we able to familiarize and recognize easily. Those words are Father, which is the Father, Hyphonom, heaven, Os, which is us, Pinnama, your name, Pinwille, your will, Today, which is today, and many more. Also, as we notice these words urne and ure have represents one word in modern English, which is the word hour. The Old English words, the two Old English words that represent the Lord's Prayer, which is ure and urne, mark three grammatical distinctions of case and number, which were the nominative, the accusative, genitive, and dative. These are the distinctions of singular and plural. So those words ure and urne represents the nouns. But we also observe that there are verbs in the Old English, the forgive and forgiveth, which represents forgive in modern English. In characteristics of Old English, it is rich in inflectional system. Like Proto-Indo-European and Germanic language, it is synthetic. Unlike the modern English we have right now, the Old English is synthetic, and the current English we have right now is more on analysis or more analytical. So, inflection on verbs was richer. It means the Old English in language and verbs is more richer than the current English. In Old English has case in inflection on nouns, determiners, and adjectives. Unlike in current English, it only has a case on pronouns. Unlike current English, the Old English adjectives were inflected for gender and number. So, in Old English, there are three genders. There are masculine, feminine, and neuter. There are also two numbers. These two numbers are singular and plural. In these two numbers, it represents four cases, which were the nominative, the accusative, the dative, and the genitive. In four cases in two numbers, there are two categories of noun declensions, which were the strong declension and weak declension. So let's now proceed to three genders. So the gender in noun phrase has three types of gender. Namely, the first one is masculine, a type of gender that denotes a male natural gender of a person, things, and even in notions. For example, father, which is the manly representation of masculine gender. Stan, it is represented in things, which is manly gyapon. Signing, king, and roof, which is roof. In feminine, it is opposite to the masculine because it is a gender that denotes female natural gender. Example, the queen, tongue, and love. And lastly, which is the neuter, a type of gender that denotes grammatical gender. It means that it combines man and woman. For example, woman. Why is it that woman is a neuter gender in Old English? It is because the word man in woman is a universal word before or until right now, which is man. That's why the word woman, the addition of man, which is the wo suffix, the prefix wo in woman is neutral or neuter because it represents grammatical gender. Another example, chicken and sheep. Okay? In noun forms with different categories, strong nouns and weak nouns. We have to proceed on strong nouns. So, strong nouns make up about 60% of all nouns in Old English. So, taas iyahang importansya sa Old English because it has 60% of all nouns. So it is important to learn on how to recognize and understand on how it works. So strong nouns in masculine gender is easiest because it doesn't have to base in variance in length. In direct ancestors in modern English, it adds suffix s in plural and apostrophe s in possessive. So we have the basis right now, which is in singular and plural. In singular, nominative, and accusative, it doesn't have to add suffix. But in genitive and dative, in genitive first, it does have to add suffix es or s. In dative, it adds suffix e. In plural, nominative, and accusative is also the same because it adds the suffix letter or word as In genitive, it adds suffix a, and dative adds the suffix So in the table here shows the strong nouns in masculine gender, the word stand. In modern English, it is stone. In singular, nominative, and accusative, it doesn't show. It shows that it doesn't add a suffix. But in genitive, it adds suffix word es, and in dative, it adds the suffix e. In plural, nominative, and accusative, it is an opposite to the singular, nominative, accusative because in plural, nominative, and accusative, it adds a suffix word as or as. In genitive, it adds the suffix word a, and in dative, it adds the suffix word So in nominative and accusative in gender number, the pronunciation here in the strong masculine word is stan. In genitive, stanes. Dative, stane. In plural, Nominative accusative of the word stone in the modern English, in Old English rather, is stanas. In genitive, stana, and in dative, stano. So let's have a quick activity that focusing on the strong nouns masculine. So in modern English, which is horse, and in Old English, it means horse without a. So what is the nominative, singular, and plural word? What is the singular and plural word of the accusative? In genitive and in dative. So let's pause the video for you to answer the activity and write it on the message chat box. After you write your answer, then just type it on the message chat box. Then let's check it after that. Okay, so here are the words. So a nominative, singular, and plural word of the horse in Old English is horse gyapon siya. Horse in singular nominative, but in plural, it's horses. Horses. It means that it is horses. In accusative, singular, and plural word, it is also the same as in nominative, singular, and plural, which is horse and horses. In genitive, singular, and plural word, horse s in singular, horse in plural, horses, horsa. In dative, singular, plural word, the horse and horsum. Horse in singular, horsum in plural. So in strong nouns in feminine gender is unlike the masculine gender, because in masculine gender, it didn't have to base in variations in length. But in feminine gender, it bases in variations of length. So what are those variations in length? There are two categories. One is long stem that has the long vowel or more than one consonant. For example, the word sword has two consonants, which is the R and G. And in long vowel, one of examples here is dun, which the letter U makes the word dun a long vowel. In second category is a short stem. It is opposite in the long stem because it didn't have a long vowel and it has only one consonant. For example, the word give. The word give here represents one short vowel because the IE pronounces as E, though it has two consonant vowel, but it pronounces E in general. So in basis in making a word in strong noun feminine gender, in singular nominative has to add suffix u, or you don't need to add a suffix. But in genitive and dative, it adds the suffix e, and in accusative, it didn't have to add a suffix. In plural, nominative, genitive, and accusative has to add the suffix word a or e, except from the genitive. But in dative, it adds the suffix word u. A for plural, nominative, and accusative is older. E is a new word. That's why in plural, nominative, and accusative, I refer the word e because it is new. We have to prefer the new word than the older, right? So in the table here shows in strong nouns from feminine swords. In strong nouns feminine type of gender, source in singular nominative and accusative, it didn't have to add a suffix. But in genitive and dative, they are also the same. They add the suffix word e or letter e. In plural nominative and accusative, it adds a suffix letter a, but in genitive and dative adds the word a also and in dative. So let's proceed to the third type of gender in strong nouns. So strong nouns in neuter gender or class is also the same as the feminine gender, since it also depends on the variation of length. So it means they are also the same in feminine gender. So in nominative plurals is either u or don't have to add a suffix. This class survives because it considers animal words to have zero plurals as a tendency, because there are animal words that doesn't have to add a word to make it plural. For example, a double letter in a word. For example, sheep, deer, moose, and etc. So, in basis in making a word in neuter gender, in singular nominative and accusative doesn't have to add a suffix. But in genitive, it adds a suffix letter es, and in dative as a suffix letter e. In plural nominative and accusative, it is the same, either not to add a suffix or to add a suffix u. And in genitive, a plural genitive, it adds the word or the letter a in suffix, and in dative, it adds a suffix letter un. So here in the table shows a strong nouns in neuter, which is the word ship, ship in modern English, ship. In singular nominative and accusative here, it doesn't have rather to add a suffix letter. But in genitive and in dative, it adds the word es and e in suffix. In plural nominative accusative, it adds a suffix u. In genitive, it adds a suffix a, and in dative, it adds a suffix So let's proceed to the four types of cases depending on the noun inflection. So in nominative type of case, it is a type of case that refers to the subject and the subject predicate. It is basically the case used for the subject and subject predicate, and it means that it says something about the subject. For here, the example here is the good stone rolls downhill. The rolls downhill here, it represents the predicate that it says something about the good stone. So, in illustrating the words into Old English, we have to consider the words to form a nominative case. And these words have different cases. In the word the here is an article that it does have lots of words depending on the singularity or the plurality and the case of the word. But here we focus in the nominative case, it says se, not just in article but also in adjectives and nouns. We obviously identify what word is the adjective word here. It says the good. The word good is the adjective, and the word stone here is the noun word. So, in forming it into Old English, we simply base it on the singular nominative case. That's why it says God stand. In Old English, say God stand. So, in accusative type of case, it refers to direct the object. It means that the noun is sort of being directly acted on. For example, here I see the good stone. We obviously identify what is the subject. It is the good stone, and the word I see here, it is an action word that is being directly acted on. So in forming it in Old English, we have to base it in the number, which were the singular and the plural, and also its case. But we have only to focus in accusative, and the subject here, the sentence here is a singular form of sentence. That's why we have to focus on the adding the words depending on the case and number. So when forming it in Old English, it says ish seya the godne stan. So in dative, it is a type of case that refers to an indirect object. It also an object of propositions. It means that to give something, to buy something, and etc. For example, here in the current English, I sit the good stone. The subject here is the good stone, and the preposition word or the phrase here is I sit near. So in forming it into Old English, we have to base on adding the words, the suffixes in each words in singular dative words. So it means that the Old English translation here is ich seteneia deum godnum stanum. So lastly is a genitive type of case. It is a case of possession and signifies a specific relationship between two words. So it means that genitive is a type of case of possession that it shows a relationship between words. For example, a piece of the good stone. So in this particular sentence, it shows the relationship between the good stone and a piece. So it means that it is only a piece of good stone. So in forming in Old English, we have to base it in a singular form, a singular genitive form of case in strong noun. So that's why we have to add suffixes. That's why it says sep deas godes stanes. Thank you for your participation, and I'm hoping that you will be able to learn something on the short overview of the Old English. Though I only focus in the noun type of words in Old English, but I'm hoping that you will be able to catch up and to learn more about the Old English morphology and inflections. Thank you and God bless.